Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are going to completely flip the script on how you think about your daily attention span. We're bridging that gap between heavy academic neuroscience and the practical, everyday productivity you actually care about. Our goal here? To deeply understand exactly why we get so easily distracted in the modern world, and much more importantly, how we can practically rewire our physical brains for intense, unshakable focus. Let's dive in.
So, let's start with a feeling we all know way too well. Why is it so incredibly hard to just put your phone down? I mean, we've all felt it, right? That almost magnetic struggle of mindlessly checking our devices when we know for a fact we should be working. It feels like a moral failing or just a lack of willpower, doesn't it? But here is the truth, and it's a huge relief. It isn't about your willpower at all. The answer actually lies deep within your brain's physical architecture.
Section 1. The neuroscience of distraction.
Let's literally look under the hood of your brain. There is an actual neurological tug-of-war going on every single time you try to concentrate. Think of your prefrontal cortex as the conscious pilot fighting for your long-term goals. It's handling the decision-making and self-control, but it's constantly battling against the basal ganglia, which is essentially your brain's autopilot. Now, the basal ganglia absolutely craves easy, automatic routines because they save precious cognitive energy. When you try to focus, your prefrontal cortex is working overtime, but the very second you get tired, that basal ganglia swoops in and tries to take the wheel.
When that autopilot does finally take over, a major shift happens. According to neuroscientific research, this exact transfer of control from the conscious decision-making in the prefrontal cortex over to the automatic processing in the basal ganglia is what actually creates a habit. Your brain is actively pushing repeated behaviors down into the basal ganglia so you don't have to consciously think about them anymore. It's a brilliant energy-saving mechanism, but, well, it actively works against us when the habit happens to be a distraction. And this whole automatic process, it runs on a super simple three-step habit loop, which was famously outlined by Charles Duhigg. First, there's a cue, like a notification buzz on your phone, or even just a feeling of stress. That cue triggers a routine, which is the behavior itself, like grabbing your phone. Finally, you get a reward. That quick distraction or funny video releases a hit of dopamine, which basically tells your basal ganglia, hey, that felt really good. Let's make sure we remember this exact sequence for next time.
Now, here's the absolute kicker, the crucial takeaway. This isn't just a psychological loop, it is a physical one. Through a process called neuroplasticity, every single time you repeat that loop, like checking social media the second you feel stressed, you are physically wiring your brain. You're strengthening the synaptic connections between those specific neurons. You are essentially paving a smoother, much faster neurological highway, which makes that distraction even more automatic the next time you face that cue.
Section 2. Myth-busting the dopamine detox.
You have probably heard online influencers hyping up the dopamine detox to cure your digital distraction. But let's take a playfully investigative look at why the internet's absolute favorite productivity hack is, well, scientifically inaccurate. As Medical News Today states quite clearly, a true dopamine detox is not possible. Listen, dopamine isn't some toxic substance you can just sweat out in a sauna. It's a fundamental neurotransmitter. Your body is constantly producing it from movement, sleep, and motivation. If you actually detox completely from dopamine, you literally wouldn't be able to move. So no, you cannot eliminate it, but you certainly can redirect it.
So instead of a literal dopamine detox, the clinical technique, which was originally created by psychiatrist Dr. Cameron Sepa, is actually called a behavioral fast. This is aimed at detaching from specific, impulsive, high-reward stimuli. We're talking excessive internet use, emotional eating, gambling, things like that, all to reduce your dependence on them. The goal isn't to stop feeling pleasure. The goal is to let yourself actually feel bored for a little while so you're no longer a total slave to those cheap, immediate hits of stimulation.
Section 3. Entering deep work. Once we actually understand how to manage our brain's intense cravings for those cheap rewards, we can introduce the ultimate productivity weapon, deep work. Coined by computer science professor Cal Newport, deep work is the specific skill required to learn hard things quickly and produce exceptional outputs in today's information economy. It requires pushing your cognitive capabilities to their absolute limit. You cannot do this with a podcast playing in the background or while occasionally tabbing over to check your email. No way. It demands a state of ruthless, distraction-free concentration. This concept completely changes the framework for our workday, creating a really stark contrast between two types of tasks. On one side, you have shallow work. This is all those logistical tasks, answering emails, sitting in status meetings, or just moving data around a spreadsheet. It traps you in the illusion of busyness. You feel like you're working really hard,
but you're honestly just treading water. Deep work, on the other hand, is high value and intense. It is the rare, focused work that actually pushes your career, your learning, and your ambitions forward. It's the kind of work that algorithms and AI cannot easily replicate.
But keep in mind, and this is a big one, our ability to perform deep work is strictly finite. You can't just decide to do deep work for 12 hours straight. Research suggests we have a hard upper limit of about 4 hours per day before our capacity to direct focused attention naturally diminishes. At conscious pilot we talked about earlier, the prefrontal cortex, it simply gets exhausted. So those 4 hours, they are incredibly precious.
Section 4. Building a focus routine.
So how do we build a concrete action plan to make this intense focus a daily habit? Well, you start by choosing a deep work scheduling philosophy that actually fits your life. Newport outlines 4 approaches. You could go monastic and completely isolate yourself like a monk. You could use bimodal, where you divide your week into focus days and shallow days. Rhythmic involves blocking out a few hours every single day at the exact same time, which, by the way, is absolutely perfect for building a strong basal ganglia habit. Or there's journalistic, where you squeeze focus in wherever your chaotic schedule allows. Pick one and stick to it, so your brain learns exactly when it's time to fire up. Now, what is truly fascinating is that your habits totally outside of the office actually physically prepare your brain to concentrate too. For instance, getting at least 150 minutes of moderate exercise a week literally alters your brain. Studies show that regular cardiovascular exercise actually increases brain volume and significantly improves your spatial memory and cognitive function. Moving your body literally builds a physically better brain for focus. How cool is that? And if you combine that exercise with proper hydration, getting a solid 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and just 5 minutes of daily mindfulness meditation, you're providing yourself with a comprehensive, science-backed toolkit to boost your overall cognition. Think of these as the fundamental infrastructure for your prefrontal cortex. Because let's be real, if you are sleep-deprived and completely dehydrated, you are handicapping your brain's conscious pilot before the battle against distraction even begins.
Section 5. Purging shallow work. To actually protect those precious 4 hours of daily deep work capacity, we have to ruthlessly clear the decks of all that logistical noise. The absolute best tool for this is time blocking. By proactively dividing your workday into specific blocks and batching similar shallow tasks together, you take back control. For example, instead of keeping your inbox open all day and letting it constantly hijack your basal ganglia with dopamine cues, you check emails only during 1 or 2 designated 30-minute windows. You force your brain to be intentional with its attention rather than just constantly reacting.
This approach ties perfectly into a brilliant concept Cal Newport calls fixed schedule productivity. Embracing a fixed schedule basically means you decide in advance what time you will absolutely stop working, say 5 p.m., and you work backward from there. This stops you from working ridiculous, inefficient hours, and it shifts you straight into a scarcity mindset. It naturally raises the bar for what actually gets your attention. Because when time is scarce, you relegate the unimportant, shallow work to the bin exactly where it belongs, ensuring your deep work is always prioritized. So let's wrap this whole explainer up with a challenge for you. Now that you understand the hidden mechanics of your brain's autopilot, the reality behind the dopamine detox myth, and the undeniable power of deep work, I really want you to look closely at your own day. What is one shallow, distracting task you will completely eliminate from your schedule tomorrow? Just one. Take back your attention, start training your brain, and kick off your deep work practice. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.